and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. Viewers, you must be aware of what Bangladesh's caretaker, government's caretaker, I would say, Muhammad Yunus has done. I mean, he had this audacity, this unelected man who does not have any constitutional validity, who has just been imposed there to basically hang around and apparently doing God knows whose bidding. This man has the audacity to go to China and say things like he's deciding India's future, he's deciding India's boundaries. He's telling the Chinese basically that you see there are these 7 states, the northeastern states, all that you have to do, that was the implication by the way, all that you have to do is that take those 7 states and automatically you see they are landlocked, they do not have any access to the ocean. We in Bangladesh are the guardian of the ocean. And you see, you get straight access to the ocean. And you see, he has mapped out everything. In terms of Nepal, also you are reaching out to Nepal and all. He has mapped out everything. The only factor he has not taken into account is the India factor. And he has also become the guardian of the ocean, which is named after India. Now, to discuss all this and much more, I have Hindol Sengupta, who is historian and professor of international relations at OP Jindal Global University. And he's also the founder of Global Order, a think tank. Hindol, what do you think? I mean, the kind of this audacious statement that Yunus made in China.
Thank you, Joyeeta. It's a pleasure being with you once again. Thank you very much for inviting me. Look, I think there are 2 or 3 reasons for this. I think Yunus is extremely desperate at this point in time. The journey that he had envisaged, I think, for himself and his interim government hasn't quite panned out in that way. There are 2 or 3 reasons for that. One is that, Sheikh Hasina, who was essentially in their calculation going to disappear, hasn't disappeared. She's very much up and about. She keeps making these statements. And the Awami League, which was going to get wiped out, is far from being wiped out. It still has considerable hold, perhaps in 40-50% of the voters in Bangladesh. Now, there is another reason for this. You see, this whole cutting off in the northeast of India from what we call the chicken's neck, the Shiliguri corridor, is an old Islamist dream. I mean, people have been dreaming about this for a long, long time. But you see, Yunus realizes, I'm sure, he's a clever man, that actually something else might happen in Bangladesh. And let me say this to you. You see, in India's strategic calculations, it has always been very apparent that that border area of Bangladesh, which is Rangpur, which is about 13 or 14% Hindus, and Rajshahi, which is about 6% Hindus, these were the latest calculations. The numbers could have gone up by now. Now, that area is highly restive, and the kind of atrocities and constant poking of Hindus that happen in Bangladesh, for all you know, a Balochistan-like situation might emerge there. Please remember, if Rangpur and that area breaks away, it resolves India's chicken's neck problem once and for all. Yunus realizes, as he sees Balochistan, as he sees what's happening in Myanmar, because he's also squeezed from that end, because what's happening in Myanmar and the Chin rebels are also squeezing him in the whole, Chattogram hill tracts and so on and so forth. I think he realizes that he's in a very precarious position because he doesn't have a party, he doesn't have a mass following. And the BNP in Bangladesh, the single largest opposition party to the Awami League, which was supporting Yunus for a long time, today has started saying, no, we cannot wipe out the memories of the Mukti Juddho, of the Mukti Jodhas. This bringing down, I think they made a big mistake by in such a callous way tearing down Bangabandhu's home where he was actually assassinated. God. That I think this will live, they will live to regret this. This was a big mistake. They thought by wiping out that home, they will wipe out his memory. Exactly the reverse has happened. Soon after they destroyed that home, BNP started to come out and say, no, we cannot wipe out the memory of Bangabandhu. BNP realizes that Yunus is not even giving a clear trajectory to when the elections are going to happen. So they are wary. So Yunus, I think, and America, which they always depended on, America is a Trump government now. There's 37% tariffs. So what is going to happen to Bangladesh's economy and what is going to happen to its geopolitics is a big question mark. So I think the desperation is showing in Muhammad Yunus's statements, especially when he goes to China.
Yeah, okay, now if he is so desperate, if we can discuss a little more in detail about the Rangpur area that you talked about, does Yunus realize that there is a problem there, that this can always happen in the future? That's a possibility?
Look, I mean, let me just say this.
If I can bring in the example
Yes,
of Donbass over here, because that's what exactly happened with Ukraine.
absolutely.
That Russian speaking region went totally against Ukraine, and look where now what is happening with
And
Zelensky.
this is exactly what's happening in Balochistan, right? It is a relatively less taken care of people and less taken care of region, which has rebelled and now is out of control. The same thing is happening in Pakistan's northwest frontier province. All of these areas are, you see, I always say as a historian, the long arc of the 20th century is still with us. All of these sovereignty questions in South Asia are all question marks. These are unfinished businesses. So you should not be surprised if tomorrow the maps look very different once again. And I think one thing you have to give Muhammad Yunus, he's a very smart man. He definitely knows his economics, and I have no doubt that he knows his geopolitics too. So, as an intelligent, clever man, I am sure he sees this too, that all of this is question mark. So, what is going to happen in the future? We don't know to all these maps. So, therefore, his only real, area of begging essentially is China. But you see, the Chinese are very clever. They have already burnt their hand in Balochistan. Please remember the CPEG dream, that Gwadar airport, all of that lies in ruins today. So the Chinese are not going to get embroiled in something like this once again. Also, as far as being the guardian of the ocean, this is very funny, Joyeeta.
Yeah, how is he guardian of the Indian Ocean?
This is quite ridiculous. Please remember, come on. The Bay of Bengal is India's territory.
Yeah.
The Bay of Bengal is the place where we not only have an Eastern Command in Vishakhapatnam, we also have, remember, Andaman Command, right? And we are fortifying the Andaman Command by, building a whole range of new facilities. Also, remember, we have Project Varsha, which is our project to house SSBNs in the Bay of Bengal. So we are building facilities to store our ballistic missile empowered submarines in the Bay of Bengal. What does Bangladesh have? It has 2 diesel powered submarines they bought from China. This is a joke. Bangladesh is not the guardian of the Bay of Bengal. The Bay of Bengal's guardian has been, is, and will always be India. India is very cognizant of what the Chinese are doing in the Bay of Bengal, right? But as of today, we control the Bay of Bengal. India controls the Bay of Bengal. This is all bluster. This is very funny. To anybody who really looks at the map and looks at what the Bangladesh Navy has, this is all very funny. So I don't know on what basis Muhammad Yunus is saying this, but yeah, it's a joke.
No, but would you say when he's talking to China, this is basically he is offering Bangladesh as a base to the Chinese so that they can encircle India's northeast and have an easier access to the Bay of Bengal, even though China is building that CMEC, China-Myanmar Economic Corridor, which is giving them some kind of an access to the Bay of Bengal.
That's right. Well, what is going to happen in CMEC now, Joyeeta, please remember, is again very questionable. It all depends on what the final result of the Myanmar civil war really turns out to be. And we certainly don't know that yet. We will see how that pans out. The other thing is, yes, of course, the Chinese want more and more leverage in the Bay of Bengal. Please remember, this was one of the fears the Americans had even with Sheikh Hasina, that she was going deeper into Chinese assistance, right, especially in the Bay of Bengal. The Americans are very wary about what's going on in the Bay of Bengal. We are certainly very careful about what's going on in the Bay of Bengal, which is why we are boostering the Andaman facilities to such a great degree. So we are extremely careful. The point is, Yunus does not have American support in quite the same way anymore, which he used to perhaps at one point, at least he believed that he used to, right? The truth, who knows, right? And he certainly does not have the capabilities in-house to do something about this. China is his best bet, but please remember, and I'm really glad that you mentioned CMEC, please think about it from China's point of view. Your CPEC adventure has ended very badly. Your CMEC adventure, in fact, wherever the Chinese seem to go, there is a civil war that happens there. You know, in Balochistan, they tried to build this CPEC thing, there's civil war. In Myanmar, they tried to do something, now there's a civil war there. So do the Chinese really want to embroil themselves in one more civil war? Maybe not.
Yeah, because you see, here I must explain to the viewers. Now, this ocean part, basically, what Yunus is, I think, doing is Yunus playing into China's, if I can use that word, insecurities to the extent because China does not have any direct access to the ocean because those are island chains and there. So you see, one of the reasons they want to use Bay of Bengal is to get a direct access to the Indian Ocean. Otherwise, it's very tough. So this is what Yunus is hoping that China will pick up. But do you think China is that foolish that they will go to war with India because to make Yunus happy vassal state?
No. I mean, China is not going to war with anybody in a hurry. Please remember, China is not even going to war to get back Taiwan, so to speak. Their
not
great
yet.
dream. Not yet. But, you know, all signs suggest that they are far more wary of an open conflict because the Chinese economy is not doing well. You see, there are also macro reasons for this. The transition that the Chinese wanted to make to convert the economy from an export-driven economy to a consumption-led, in their domestic consumption, internal consumption-led economy hasn't happened. It's not happening. And they are really, really worried that if this doesn't happen, where will they keep finding markets to keep growing using an export-led model? In fact, I would argue Bangladesh is significant for the Chinese because it has 200 million people. At the very baseline, there are lots of people to buy stuff, whatever that stuff is, right? And that could be, you know, one way of looking at it. But, you know, the Chinese also play the long game. You see, now that the tariffs have come into play, if China gets into a trade war with the US, we don't know what's going to happen to that. In fact, if the Bangladeshi textile industry now really collapses under 37% tariffs from the US, we don't know what's going to happen next. I actually would argue that all of this means that India's great dream of getting deeper into American supply chains, this is a moment once again.
Yeah.
You see, there was a moment right after COVID, where, you know, the Americans said they wanted to friendshore and shorter supply chains, or, you know, resilient supply chains and so on and so forth. But at that time we tried a lot. Our FDI also went up significantly. But Vietnam outgunned us in many ways, right? But if you see the tariffs that Donald Trump has announced, they are very interesting. There are big tariffs also on Vietnam and Cambodia, because these countries are de facto deeply integrated into the Chinese supply chains. So therefore, there is an opportunity. I mean, the Indian tariffs are roughly about half of what has been put on China. So there is an Indian opportunity once again. And where is the opportunity? Textiles is one no-brainer, right? If Bangladesh, textiles begin to totter, which they already are, there's a big opportunity for India to really push its textiles. The other thing, of course, is what I would call low-end manufacturing. Right? So India is always trying to make the leap forward with advanced technology, but there is also a great deal of technology that we need at the base level. Just the other day I was seeing that, kettles, electronic kettles, we only supposedly make 50% of the parts of an electronic kettle in India, and the rest is imported. And I looked at that and I was like, this is ridiculous. Why do we not make kettles in our country? So obviously, because there's a supply chain argument to all of this, but I think we are now in a different world. You see, The 30, 40, 50 years of globalization under the WTO and the GATT agreements and so on and so forth, all of this is beginning to unravel now. So now we're in a whole new world where the more we build even baseline manufacturing capabilities, the better it is for us. And see, we are attacking on both ends, right? Baseline we should grow, and at the top end, our defense exports are going up. So this is a win-win. But this is India, right? I mean, we always manage to put some bureaucratic hurdle into our growth sectors, and I hope that doesn't happen. But it's a moment of opportunity. I would say it's a moment of opportunity.
Now, at the same time, in fact, before I go into the next question, I was just reading one of the reasons why Vietnam got such a high tariff is because they are saying that their warehouses and everything are being used by China to
Yeah.
keep their products. So that is one of
Absolutely.
the reasons why this 47% tariff has been declared on
Absolutely.
Vietnam. Now, you see, when we are looking at Bangladesh, I mean, it's not just social media or on visual media or whatever. There is such great animosity towards India. Okay, and it seems it is being stoked by people like Yunus and definitely by people surrounding him. In which la la land do they live? That they actually believe that they can get, Pakistan and China and basically ensure that they will make India's life difficult. Because you see, don't they also have to realize that you cannot fight with the crocodile while being in the same water? You know that there's this Bengali
And
saying.
Hindi, पानी में रह के मगरमच्छ से बैर नहीं करते. That's right. Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Bangladeshis realize, at least sensible Bangladeshis realize, that the way forward is really in tandem with India. You see, India's economy is so large that if you make peace with India, there are a lot of economic benefits to be accrued, right? I mean, look at the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis are always trying to send goods all around the world. It's because they have not been able to find peace with India. Imagine if Pakistan found peace with India and struck a deal which works for both countries. The natural place for Pakistani goods and services to come to is India. Transportation costs would dramatically reduce, supply chains would dramatically improve. But it's because they're so hell bent on being India's enemy that they can never get this. The Bangladeshis, have to work with us, whether it's labor, whether it's goods, whether it's any kind of, including electricity. Last time you and I were talking about this, whether it's electricity, they are totally dependent on India. Pakistan is not going to come and sell electricity to them. You see, so this is all a pipe dream. So they have to work with India, and I think, in a sense, a moment of reckoning is coming. You would have heard that there is this new students' party in Bangladesh,
Yes.
political party. Now, that students' party obviously emerged out of this ferment that happened against Sheikh Hasina. Obviously, that student party, if and when an election happens, we will see how this party does. But my assessment is that that party has been created perhaps at some point, even if they do well or whatever, to say that, well, we want Yunus as our leader. Perhaps that's the strategy. And parties like BNP now see through the strategy. They know what's going on. Look, at the end of the day, were Yunus to really shake hands with India and, work with India, I actually think that a man like him has the potential to be good for Bangladesh. He's an intelligent man. He understands the world. He definitely understands economics. He could do well for his country. But
And he calls himself an international player, by the way.
and he has definitely international connections. But he will not get what he wants by being India's enemy. This is a flawed dream. Also, I would not be surprised, let me say this. Anybody who thinks Sheikh Hasina has exited the scene permanently is fooling themselves. You never know how this will pan out. For all you know, tomorrow you can come to a situation where Bangladesh is in such ferment that Sheikh Hasina, makes a triumphant return, so to speak. Anything can happen. So there's a lot of turmoil in Bangladesh. And I think Muhammad Yunus is making a mistake by saying these things against India, because he will have to work with India. There is no choice. And the age where Europe and others would pour billions of dollars into Bangladesh, that age is coming to an end, right? So he will have to work with India. And like I said, I think he's making a mistake by saying these things.
So, when you're talking about turmoil inside Bangladesh, what exactly is going on?
Well, of course, there is a big problem of employment, right? I mean, remember, one of the things that Sheikh Hasina really got crippled by, it was that inflation had really surged its ugly head. And there was a big problem of employment. Even when people were employed, the wages that they were getting was so pitiable compared to, especially in the textile industry and so on and so forth, compared to inflation, that people just became too restive. There was just not enough money. That problem hasn't gone away. The coming of Muhammad Yunus doesn't mean a pot of gold has landed on Bangladesh's shores, right? So that problem has not gone away anywhere. Bangladesh needs to find new ways. Lutfe Siddiqui, one of the advisors of Muhammad Yunus, and a very sensible man by all counts, he recently said at a platform that, look, one of the advantages that Bangladesh has is that it has really young people, even younger than India, which is true. It does have a lot of young people. And these young people could potentially really benefit many countries as workers, if given the right training, given the right, resources, be very good as workers in various parts of the world. And I think he's right. But for all of this to happen, that's the right strategy. But for all of this to happen, fundamental geopolitics and politics have to be stable. And that's what I'm saying, that I think Muhammad Yunus and his team perhaps have a lot of good economic ideas. I would not be surprised if they do. But all of this can only come into play if there is peace. If you're constantly fighting your biggest, the country that gives you the biggest amount of assistance in every field, and which is the regional behemoth, you're not going to win this game. It's a myth if you think you're going to win this game.
And how bad is the radicalization situation on the ground?
Very bad. Much worse than people assume. You see now, and we discussed this in the past also, as the radicalization in the Middle East begins to really dim down, and because of the pressures from, say, the UAE government and the Saudi Arabian government and so on and so forth, the real radicalization is in our part of the world, Bangladesh and Pakistan. Right, and some of the real, the real dregs of humanity kind of radicals are in Bangladesh and Pakistan. So this is going to be a problem. We can't run away from this. And please remember, both those countries have roughly, give or take, nearly 200 million people. So this is going to be a problem.
Is it because of this radical population that Yunus is so full of animosity, or rather at least he's showing that he has got so much animus against India because he's, after all, the front man, the mask of these radicals?
It's possible. Look, he's squeezed from all sides. That's what I'm saying. He's now squeezed from all sides. He's not a bona fide elected leader. So he has no democratic mandate, right? He also doesn't have street presence, in the sense that tomorrow if Muhammad Yunus wants to block Dhaka and get a lakh of people on the streets, can he do that? No. Unlike in Bengal, right? Mamata Banerjee is a bona fide elected leader. Tomorrow if she gives a call, 2 lakh people can, bring Calcutta to a standstill. But Yunus can't do that. Sheikh Hasina could do that, right? Now the problem is that his only big bets were America. But that bet also doesn't exist anymore, right? I'm sure he still gets some support from some quarters. But the real big bet, imagine if the Democrats had come back to power. That would have really strengthened his hand. That's also not there. And China, which is his other bet, is too embroiled in its own problems. So he's really squeezed from all sides. I don't envy his position. But, what he's doing to elevate the position will not help.
Yeah, so do you think election is possible in Bangladesh towards the end of the year? And do you think these elections will be free and fair?
There has never been a free and fair election in the way we understand it in Bangladesh. Every Bangladeshi government has been part authoritarian. There has never been a non-authoritarian government in Bangladesh, right from the first one. Please remember, even Bangabandhu, was in fact accused of being dictatorial. Right? The people who killed Bongo Bondhu accused him of being a dictator. Right? So the thing is, the free and fair election as we understand it, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have my doubts. I don't think it has ever happened in that way in Bangladesh. What really happens in Bangladesh is, as you know, they create an interim body which oversees the election and so on and so forth. So that, because they don't trust, the opposition party doesn't trust the party in power, right? I think an election is very necessary in Bangladesh. At least it will settle down the question of democratic legitimacy. See, Yunus doesn't have any democratic legitimacy. Who appointed him to in power?
Exactly.
Right? So there will be some question of democratic legitimacy which will get fixed. And I think it will have to get fixed. However, having said that, let me also say what Yunus was trying to do makes sense if he had the conditions right, and the conditions are not right. See, he was basically trying to say that the Bangladeshi political system itself is so corrupt that unless there is massive reforms in that system, there will be no real change. You can have an election, the same guys will come back to power and they will do the same things, which is absolutely true. But the thing is, you can only do this if you have a massive sort of street following and the right resources and support from, a whole bunch of quarters, which he doesn't have. So I'm sure an election will either happen or will be forced upon him at some point. I don't know which juncture or what dateline this election will follow, but it will have to happen. My fear is that even if it happens, see, Yunus can, tomorrow election happens, some party comes to power, maybe the BNP comes to power, Yunus can just up it and leave. He was anyway living outside Bangladesh. He can go and stay in whichever Western country he wants to go and live in. But the fact is, Bangladesh's situation will not become better. That's the big problem.
Yeah, now as we approach towards the end of the program, I mean, I've got a couple of questions. Number one is that what are the possibilities of an army coup, military coup in Bangladesh?
Very high.
Seriously?
Very high. I'm sure you read recent reports.
Yes.
That a large number of sitting and former Bangladeshi army commanders had planned a coup against the sitting head of the Bangladesh army. And India, with India's help and some other help, it had been scuttled. But a coup in Bangladesh, the chances are very high. Please remember, even Sheikh Hasina had faced it, right? And this can definitely happen. See, when the Islamists realize that there is no other, what are they going to do, right? They're not getting the breakthrough that they want, and even an election doesn't seem likely. The easiest thing in Bangladesh and Pakistan has always been a military coup. So I would not be surprised that the Islamist faction of the Bangladeshi armed forces, with certain political forces and the Islamist parties, come together to foment a coup in Bangladesh. I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I would say, there's a 50-50 chance. 50-50, one part is an election would happen, and there's a 50% chance of a coup happening. And that's not good news.
That's not good news at all.
For anyone.
Yeah.
Including us.
And especially if the Islamists, another, Islamists in olive, they come to power.
You know what's going to happen. I mean, it's like when the BNP was last in power.
Yeah.
They will immediately start supporting every terrorist group that is against India from their territory.
Which they are doing anyway right now.
That's right. But now it's like, how should I say, now there is some parda to it, so to speak. Then it will be open.
Okay. Last question. What should India do, and what are the chances of India going in for a kinetic conflict to settle the situation sooner or later? Maybe later.
I don't think a kinetic conflict is useful. I think what is useful is to prevent a coup. I think India still has enough resources inside and outside Bangladesh to try and prevent a coup, right? My apologies. If India is able to prevent a coup, that will be very good. And push for an election. See, at least with an election, you're dealing with known devils, so to speak, right? Okay, so the BNP might come to power. Okay, but India has dealt with the BNP before. They will also stoke some terrorists, whatever. But these are players India knows. dealing with Islamists would be very difficult.
And that possibility is very high, you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah. See, the ideal situation for India would be that Yunus sees the path, so to speak, and realizes that this is, not going to work, and comes to some sort of compromise with India and works with India. Or even better, that there is some ferment and Sheikh Hasina returns to power. But if either of those two things don't happen, I would say an election is a much better idea and stopping a coup from happening.
And so India is definitely not going in to secure its chicken's neck right now.
Not at the moment. I mean, our chicken's neck is completely, the Shiliguri corridor is completely secure. It's just that some people keep thinking that it's not secure, it's not secure. Funnily enough, they will realize, quite like the Pakistanis are realizing in Balochistan, people who tried to take away Indian territory might soon realize that their own territory is going. Pakistan fought so hard to take away Indian territory all these years. Now Balochistan is breaking up, Northwest Frontier Province, you don't know. So the Bangladeshis should learn from this example. Before you try to pinpoint and try to take over Indian territory, please remember, for all you know, your territory will disappear.
Absolutely, absolutely. Viewers, as Hindol said, I think Yunus needs to wake up and smell the coffee, if I can use that phrase here. The thing is primarily because he may be kind of, hobnobbing with Pakistan, cozying up to China and all. But I don't think his position, it's not even certain whether he can be there and for how long. Thank you, Hindol.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, Joyeeta.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.